It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Flying down from Nova Scotia today.
This nation was founded by men of many nations and backgrounds.
I have a dream that all men are created equal.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have a liftoff.
Doom Nation, what's up, everybody? Yes, I shaved my beard. We'll go past that from here on. But as always, it is the Captain and Skaggs, and you are listening to the Two Doom Men podcast. And of course, we got another show for you guys today. Skaggs, do your thing.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I like how you got the elephant out of the room
Yeah.
right off the bat. The first topic, already gone, done, covered. The captain has
Captain
shaved
shaves
his
beard.
Yeah, so we are here with my buddy Lance. What's going on, bro?
How's it going, guys? Thanks for having me.
Thank you for driving about 2 hours to come here in person and do that. That was pretty awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you,
not
man.
that bad
Sorry
of a
I
drive.
couldn't be there, man.
No, that's fine. I'll love to meet you one day in person, but
We will.
Pretty good drive. Did not account for driving west the whole way. I live in Northeast Connecticut. Sun on my eyeballs the whole way.
Driving into the sunset.
Yeah, because at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it's right right on the horizon. But beautiful. I mean, you live in a mountain.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Like I was driving through the mountains the whole way. Yeah. Yeah.
Driving to
it was really
Skaggs' house is nice. Where I used to work, you would either like take the highway up, or if you took the back roads, like you come across like the elite parts of Connecticut, and then like you're in farm country, just farms and farms and farms, and
Yeah,
it becomes this
Connecticut's-
beautiful drive.
Yeah, it's a I don't know how much you know about Connecticut. You're in Yonkers, right?
Yeah,
He was
Westchester,
mentioning
yep.
that earlier. Yeah. Like the coast and like the bottom, the coast, and then like if you break it down to quadrants, the bottom
Yeah.
left-hand corner as you get in towards New York,
yeah,
bottom right-hand corner down by like the Navy bases and stuff is all like very suburban and cities, and then central right around Hartford.
Mhm.
But other than that, like I live in the Northeast corner. They call it the quiet corner. But there's no mountains. It's all like,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like,
Flat,
but
like
it's just,
plains.
yeah, it's like I just bought a house, a new house. And it's in like a farm country. Like I mean, there's nothing but farms in the town I'm in. So it's a little bit opposite, but it's very rural, like this area. Very,
yeah.
very, very, very
Probably,
rural.
probably good
Yeah.
hunting land, right? You got a lot of deer.
Probably. I don't hunt. We were just talking about
Yeah.
we've talked about that a few times. I mean, I'm a huge I'm all about guns, but not those kind of guns.
Yeah.
They're like the self-defense stuff. I'm
Yeah.
too. But I don't hunt. City boy, we talked about that. And now like I'll never go back to the city. But there's certain things where it's like you take the boy out of the city, but you can't take the city out of the boy. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and I hunting and like ice fishing. Like my wife I have a 1.5-year-old daughter, and she's like, "Oh, we should bring her out on the ice." And I'm like, "The fuck you are? I'm not." It's like I am not. I'm like, that takes 2 yeses. We have a rule in my house. There's certain things, and it works both ways. Like my wife's a tough cookie, where like it takes 2 yeses. That's like the way we word it. Like that has to be. We both are on the same page
Yeah.
about it. And I'm like, you are never getting a yes. I don't care if I see planes landing on that ice. My daughter's not going out on that ice.
I
It's
feel
not
you.
happening.
I always wanted to move south down to like Texas and stuff. I had a very good friend live down there for many years, and I went down there to visit him, and I was loving Dallas. And he's like, once you come down here though, he's like, there's no pizza, there's no bodegas, there's no delis. He's like, if you want
that's a
Chinese
good
food, you
bodega.
go to Panda Express. You want pizza, you go to Domino's. And I was like,
Yeah,
oh man,
for all its negatives, especially
Yeah.
like New York City, there are some positives.
Oh,
still.
yeah.
The bodegas, like you could go and get like a chopped cheese sandwich, or like the
Yep.
best slice of pizza is around the corner at any single corner.
Oh yeah.
I am lucky. I have a really good pizzeria. up
that
here,
you do.
so-
That one that makes
Yeah.
the Big Mac pizza is a crazy spot.
Oh, that's
Right,
another
yeah.
good one too. But
Yeah.
yeah, man,
It's hard to find good once you I lived in New York till I was about 13, and there's just certain things that like pizza, bagels.
Yeah,
Mhm.
There's
Yeah.
there's certain things that like unless you've had one there. Like I'm always like, I mean, it was all right. It's pizza. I mean, it's not hard. It's not hard to like make pizza. Like
Yeah.
it's hard to make a really bad pizza, but like to make a really good pizza once you've had like a real good slice from New York. Oh, but I will say, New Haven, Connecticut is and rightfully so is the pizza capital of the world. I don't know where your listeners are from, what
They're all
like
over the
geographically, but New Haven, Connecticut, the pizza in New Haven. Now, granted, that's an hour. It's literally an hour from New York. It's not that far, but there's a couple. I mean, Frank Pepe's is like known around the country, and so
Is that where
They have the
originally
clams
from?
on their pizza,
I
right?
think so. That's like one of the. That's like his signature one.
Yeah.
But you just get a regular slice, just a regular slice of cheese. That the best pizza in the world is in New Haven. In that one little pocket, but yeah, you got to go to New York, New Haven for that.
Yeah.
That's where you get pizza.
You know, people always say the pizza in New York City is so good because of the water supply
heard
is
that.
so pure and clean. Water
I
supply
don't-
is like up
Probably
here.
reverse, but
I don't know. The water supply is up here, all the reservoirs and whatnot. And I go fishing in them. They are pretty clean, and for the most part, they're well maintained. So I think that does have something to do. It's like high quality water will produce high quality bread.
Yeah.
I was
flour.
gonna say that's what they used to make the dough, right?
You write the dough. Yeah.
Kind of maybe trickles down. Yeah.
Speaking of New York, our buddy just sent us a video that had me cracking up the entire afternoon. So, for a little topic we could talk about is just how badly crime has gotten out of control, especially in a state like New York. And like our leaders are just sitting around going, it's a gun problem, really. It's just a gun problem. Instead, the DA won't prosecute anyone. There's cashless bail bonds. But it was maybe a 5-minute long video of
It was
homeless
too long.
people.
I had to leave. I had to scroll away. It was so long.
It was just homeless people shitting in subway stations and in subway trains and lighting trains on fire, living in subway carts, literally just like a whole bed, banging in train stations. Like, this is not a gun problem. There's just no laws left to govern these people by.
It's interesting you picked this of all things to start with, right? Because recently, I think you probably know where I'm going to go with this, but recently there was a huge like debate in the libertarian community about like the homeless problem. I don't know if you remember that. It was maybe like a month ago.
Well, I mean, talk about other podcasts.
Yeah.
Dave Smith, who's one of the. I mean, I know you listen to Dave. He's probably one of my favorite podcasters. He actually catches shit for this in the Liberty movement, for being okay with it. You just have to frame it right. You know what I mean? Like he's okay with like the understanding that like, yeah, I don't want homeless people living outside. Like I have a daughter. Like why would I want?
Right. What do you do with homeless
like,
people in the park that are like where the swing sets are and they're just like living there? Like how do you solve for that problem?
Right. Yeah. I mean, the libertarian answer, and I maybe I should start with like, I do call myself a libertarian in like these circles in conversations with people, just so that there's a starting off point.
Yeah.
But I labels are
You got your own
harder.
views.
Yeah. What's that?
You got your own views to.
Sure.
You're a
well,
libertarian, but you come up with your own views and opinions throughout the course.
Yeah. And well, the other thing that I struggle with labels is it like one, it's my own views, but then there's also like this dynamic where if you're talking to somebody and I say, well, I'm a libertarian, now they've already painted you a certain way in their own mind.
Right.
And, I'm also within the libertarian circle, I would call myself an ANCAP, like an anarcho-capitalist. But then I can chop it up with like agorists and people that are like of that kind of wing of the Libertarian Party, if you talk about it politically. But the difficult thing with libertarians is it's also, so libertarian is an ism too, right? Like it's a philosophy. Like libertarianism, it's a philosophy first, and that's what I love. That's what the Libertarian Party is just a political wing that can hopefully do some of the work of that philosophy.
Right.
And it's the philosophy that I love, and that's what I'll always cling on to. And if the party is moving away from that, which it did for a long time, then that's when I'll distance myself and I'll go about my own thing. Now, there's certain caucuses that I'm a part of that look like they're having a lot of success moving the party in a certain direction that I'm very happy with. And that's where I want to see things go. And I think that's where it makes it easier to call myself a libertarian. But yeah, it's really hard the label thing, and I know it's a cliche thing to say, but I really do think that these labels are in part a lot of the problems.
Yeah.
And they sometimes draw a line between, like,
They create the division.
yeah, that's exactly where I was going with that. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
As a libertarian, there's often things now, it's getting a little bit less this way because of the direction that, like, the progressives are going in and the directions that a lot of conservatives are going in. But I got friends and homies on both of those camps that, like, I think I agree with them on a lot of things. You know what I mean? Now, I don't always agree on how we get to where we want to be, or whatever the case may be, but I see where they're coming from. And then there's things on with both of those camps that I will look them straight in the eye and tell them how wrong they are. You know what I mean? And so that's why sometimes, like, starting conversations with, "Hi, I'm Lance, I'm a libertarian," is just such a, like, I find more success.
Hello,
I'm
Lance, I'm a libertarian.
Yeah, right. I find more success starting the conversations with just, like, issues. You know what I mean? And then come at it from that philosophy, from libertarianism, and put that angle on it. And more often than not, and this is also a common conversation within the party, more often than not, people will agree with you. And I think we have more of a marketing problem, and we need more people that know how to vote.
Dude,
yeah,
I've always agreed with that. So we were supposed to go to the Libertarian Mises Caucus for Connecticut.
The convention.
And
Yeah,
the convention.
He was gonna come with me. Yeah.
And
Real quick, I met Lance through the Mises Caucus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so then you're very familiar with this. And I was going there looking for an education and to, really get answers. Where's your champion? Where's your marketing? You want to run in 2024? Why isn't there anything in the news about it now? I think the whole party, well, no, I won't blame the whole party, but I think there is a huge marketing issue that desperately needs to be addressed right now. Unfortunately, right now, the way the landscape is, you're going to need an AOC Trump Green type of person who's just going to go, you know what I mean? Like, be out there in everyone's face, causing problems, causing the waves and all that, to get on the map, just to get people to start to recognize you guys better.
Yeah,
I think there's a huge deficit in the marketing industry for them.
Completely. And so I don't know how much you know about the Mises Caucus, and I'm one of the state organizers for Connecticut.
Okay.
My boy Steve is the other one. We actually have like 3 or 4.
We met him, right?
Yeah, we spoke with Steve. We didn't have.
Yeah. Oh, that's right.
Also,
Dincher was on here. Yeah. Awesome guy. Way smarter than me.
Yeah, he's great.
We lead off with that. So if I say something really fucking stupid, people aren't gonna be like. But no, we're both very different people. We both have very different skill sets. We also have Mike and Matt, who I should mention, are both also state organizers for the caucus. But everybody does a lot of work. So what does a caucus mean, really? It just means that you see things a little bit different than some of the other people within your party, and you see a different direction for things to go in, and we're going to band together and try to move in that direction, right? And so for the Mises Caucus, one of their big things is they understand, yes, we're the 3rd largest political party in the country, but we're 3rd by a landslide, right? Like the 2 parties in this country have control over academia, the corporate press, our education systems. They have such a stronghold, and that's on purpose, right? Like they know what the fuck they're doing, and they have the money to back it, and they have the power to do it and everything else. So because they are able to do all of that, people in the Mises Caucus, we're not focused on where we're focused politically is very like hyper local. Like, go out and get a libertarian on your like local zoning board, on your board of education, stuff like that. That's where we're politically focused, because that's where you can actually make a difference and you can actually win. There's like 500 sitting libertarians or something like that. Don't quote me on that number, but I know Pennsylvania alone has a couple hundred. Right. They just had they had a lot of success in that state. So yeah, there's a lot of there's been a lot of local races that have been won across the country. What the Mises Caucus wants to focus on is that, and then just messaging. And so that's why I didn't enjoy Jo Jorgensen. I voted for her, but I didn't enjoy her presidential run. I didn't enjoy Gary Johnson before her, right? Now, I'm a Ron Paul guy. Ron Paul, basically, I swear a lot. I've listened to you guys a little bit. Like, I know you guys.
As much cursing as
like Ron Paul, I mean, he didn't say this, but he said it. He was like, fuck you guys. This is the real shit. This is what's going on, right? And then it started a wave, right? And now and it started to change culture a little bit. You know, there's that old saying that politics are downstream of culture.
Yeah.
And that's what Ron Paul was about. And I mean, unfortunately, it was too bad Ron Paul didn't do what he did. And that's why he was like, fuck it. If this is what I got to do to get on stage so I get a bigger voice, I'll run as a Republican. And then he got up on stage and was shitting on the Republicans just as much as he was shitting on Democrats. And he was,
there's that famous video of him in the debates. And they were talking about
2008. That's what brought me into libertarianism.
And 9/11. Yeah, it's a major point that has changed a lot of people to become libertarians.
Yeah, Rudy Giuliani.
Right, where Ron Paul, they're talking about Osama bin Laden and what to do, and Ron Paul like said something which was like revolutionary at the time. Which, long story short, maybe you can quote it better. He was basically like, "Has anybody ever asked Osama bin Laden why he decided to attack us? Like, has that ever been a fucking thought in a single person's mind?" Ever, besides it was a preconceived notion that we have to go over there.
Bad guy.
Not that he's a bad guy, but like, why are we doing this the way that we're doing it? Essentially, like, why is no one asking that question? It's just we have to go to war, we have to go over there, we have to blow everything up, we have to start a whole bunch of wars over there, etc.
Yeah, I mean, the everyday American just thinks like we're fighting all these. I mean, I know you guys just talked to Horton,
right?
And that dude knows more about this topic than probably
anybody
I've ever heard.
I mean, literally anybody in the country. And if you haven't read his book, any of your listeners, Fool's Errand, just an unbelievable book. And I was telling Skaggs right before you came on, because I was looking he's got a nice little setup, the studio. It's pretty impressive. Thank you. He has the Anarchist Handbook by Michael Malice. That's my other guy. Really good book. And he and I was saying, like, Fool's Errand, you don't have to be like an academic through and through. Oh shit, that's my phone. I thought the alarm was going off again. On top of us.
The smoke alarm.
The rudest thing ever.
Yeah.
So right. Sorry.
Hey, Doom Nation, it's Skaggs here, and thank you for joining us for another episode of Two Doom Men. If you like what we are about, help us spread the message by subscribing to our channels and sharing the show with your friends. That's the best way we can get around big tech's algorithms. You can also help support the work we do by subscribing to our Patreon account at patreon.com/2doommen or by going to linktree.com/2doommen. That will bring you to everywhere our show has a presence. Thank you, and we hope you enjoy the show.
This country is doomed. It is doomed.
Yeah, Fool's Errand is like you can absorb, like, some of these books, like the Anarchist Handbook, State of the Anatomy, and Anatomy of the State, The Law by Bastiat. Like, these are books that, like, I've read now and educated myself on liberty, not necessarily, you know, conservatism or progressivism, but actually liberty. But those books that's a hard read, and they're books that you have to, like, there's so many paragraphs where you're like, let me wind it back. Let me read that paragraph again and see what was actually just said. Because, you know, it's a very academic read. Fool's Errand it's very palatable, and it's very, you take it in, and I left reading that book feeling like I was very educated, but also feeling mad. Like, there's just so much that you find out that is just so really good book. But before, you know, what we're getting into before that's before.
Honestly, you're making, I was going to say this before, because we talked a little bit about this before we even started, but even in terms of, like, Scott's book's very palatable, right? In order to read. Cap, how are you doing? I gave you the Anarchist Handbook.
I finished it.
You finished Anatomy of the State, right? So we were kind of saying before as well, I felt like the Anatomy of the State is a little bit more difficult to read, and you have to go back a couple of times to further understand it. I don't know. You just read it, so what did you think?
It is. The best part is like how well you could compare Anatomy to the State of what's going on today. Like, if you actually have your eyes open and see what's going on, and you're not, you know, a CNN bird in the sand, like your head in the sand type of person, you could see what the state is actually doing.
Murray Rothbard's getting more correct as the years go on, or more. Yeah, it's more obvious what he said was correct as they get worse. Yeah.
So, but no, it's definitely something I have to reread. Like the whole first chapter, like, was real. You know what I mean? Like, I really need to reread the first chapter again. I did, however, highlight a shit ton of stuff because there were some points that were just too good. I actually grab it. It's right here. Hold on.
Yeah, but I think this is kind of a little microcosm of maybe the problem with Libertarian Party and libertarianism in general. Like, even it's hard to understand the concept and the ideas sometimes, and to put them into words. I'm not great at it, right? I understand it definitely 100%. It sounds great to me, but I'm not great at vocalizing them. Me and Cap talk more about news and shit like that. But then you get somebody, and then you get somebody like Dave, who's just a fucking wizard at explaining positions and libertarianism and whatnot.
We need more Daves.
Right.
So,
Yes.
so there's like,
Yes.
I don't know, Skaggs, I'm fairly certain you're familiar with him. I don't know if Chris is, sorry, Cap.
It's all good.
Into like Tom Woods.
I'm familiar with Tom Woods, sure.
I don't know.
So
Skaggs
he's
showed
probably
me him,
one of
but-
the 3 or 4 biggest podcast names in the libertarian movement as well. But Tom Woods is the academic, right? He doesn't. So Dave unapologetically, literally word for word says, I want to get up there, because he's a big Ron Paul guy. Dave Smith's a big Ron Paul guy. He says, I want to get up there and talk that liberty shit. He says it just like that. And like, there's something endearing about that to a crowd. There's something like, if there's one thing that I learned from Trump and Obama, and just Bernie Sanders didn't win, but his popularity is off the charts.
Right.
AOC's popularity off the charts. Trump won. Obama won. All of them, their main piece of messaging, those might be the 4 most popular national politicians in America right now.
Yeah.
They very well could be. Maybe not now because COVID's so big that you hear like the name DeSantis a lot, and like Cuomo like groped some girls, so he's always in the news and stuff like that. But like in terms of like just actually sitting politicians, Trump's obviously not a sitting politician anymore, but these are huge names, and all 4 of them, their message is fuck the system. They don't say it that way, but their message is fuck the system, right? Like
from their point of view. Yeah.
Right. It might be pro-socialism because our system sucks. Or it might be Trump saying, I'm going to drain the swamp, make America great again, as in it's not great now, right? Like, what was, I'm trying to think of Obama's slogan.
Change.
Yeah,
Literally.
right. Literally the word change, right? Like, so people, and they're successful with that message, right? So people want like different. They know, here's what 99% of people know, that it's fucked right now, right? Like it's not going well. And it's not trending well. It's continuing to go in a bad direction. Now, the Libertarian, to go kind of full circle there with like Anatomy of the State and the Anarchist Handbook and some of these books, here's the marketing problem that I think libertarians have. It's a complex issue. It's a complex philosophy. Well, it's really not. It's very simple if you want to look at it very simply. But when you start talking about it and having a conversation like this and sitting down and talking, you know, at the very simple core, don't hurt people and take their stuff. Matt Kibbe, another good libertarian book for listeners that don't. Matt Kibbe has a book called Don't Hurt People and Don't Take Their Stuff. That's the very basic, like anything outside of those 2 things should be allowed for people to just live freely. That's the kind of the basic message of the philosophy of libertarianism. But it is far more complex than that. And to apply that to, you know, you name the hot button issue, you know, whether it's immigration or homeless or poverty or whatever, what happens is, libertarians, because it's like once you see it or read it or hear it, you can't unsee it or read it or
red pill.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, right. The matrix, right. Once you go down that road, you're never gonna not, and then that's what's in the forefront of your brain as soon as you start talking to somebody about immigration or whatever, as opposed to like what Dave is really good at is taking these complex issues and putting it through a filter and kicking it out to, he can talk to a libertarian in depth and he can talk about Rothbard, but he just appeals to the everyday guy. Well. Yeah. And we don't have enough of those people. I think it's kind of why I want to get into podcasting. It's something that I feel like I'm not Dave Smith, but it's something that I feel like I'm okay at and I want to get better at it. And it's a way for me to start that journey.
Well, this is definitely going to be a way to push yourself.
Yeah. And I think I've actually thought about, because a lot of people have said that like that might be my niche in this liberty movement. Because I'll never run for political office. I think the libertarian in me doesn't want anything to do with governing others. It's just like it's like an innate thing inside of me. But it'll be hard because there's the tech end of things. There's what I mean. But it's something that I think I want to entertain doing. And I think I've actually thought about like why do I have that skill? I think it comes from coaching. I'm a sports coach. I have to take these complex issues. I'm baseball, softball.
So you're baseball, softball?
Yeah, hitting. Yeah, I played baseball basically my whole life. got into coaching, right after I was a decent athlete when I was younger, when I had a smaller waist and more hair and less years on the birth certificate. And then I got into coaching and I just love it. And a good coach can take something very, very complex and explain it to a 15-year-old who, when was the last time you had a conversation with a 15-year-old? They're idiots, right?
Yeah.
They're dumb. So you have to take this complex thing and break it down so that somebody that doesn't understand it can understand it and then go out and perform. And so it's just something that I think that skill, and I worked in schools up until about 3 weeks ago for the past 15, 16 years. So that has, just working with kids all day and just taking this complex world that we know as adults and breaking that down for kids in a simple way just happens to be a skill that I have. And I've been able to, without even realizing it, apply it to having libertarian conversations with people. So that's my long-winded version on how we need to get better at marketing. We need people that can talk to people, and there's kind of a running joke in the libertarian community about a lot of like autistic people being in the party.
Yes, that's something I struggle with.
The social skills that,
not me. I mean, like I struggle with like trying to grasp what the fuck is going on, right? But with some people are so, maybe their social skills suck. Libertarian people, it's the liberty community, and sometimes some of them are so like strictly adhering to a philosophy that they believe in that they are living in a fucking fantasy world, like Ancapistan, as they usually call it, right? That doesn't exist in real life. Yeah, it's like, would I like for Ancapistan to exist one day? Yes, but we don't live in Ancapistan, right? We live in the real fucking world, and we have to deal with real problems, like to bring it full circle, homeless people in the park, right? How the fuck do we deal with that? I can't go there with Anatomy of the State and fucking read Rothbard to a bunch of people, homeless people in the park. That's not going to solve any problem. So it's not as cut and dry as believing.
One of the best examples of what you're talking about right now is like you see these states starting to legalize recreational use of marijuana.
Right.
And now in a libertarian, in my perfect world, and this kind of relates to like the COVID world that we're in right now, right? And this is why libertarians were right about this before this COVID nonsense, right? Whatever I want to put into my body, I should be able to put in my body. Now, as soon as I start hurting somebody else,
right,
or threatening somebody else, or stealing from somebody else, now it might make me somebody that makes terrible decisions. It might put me, there might be consequences for doing what I want. But so you'll get libertarians like, well, they'll start arguing because of the philosophy that they've learned, and that's what's in their freaking frontal cortex at that time, that they're just so stuck on, well, what about heroin, and what about cocaine, and what about this, and what about that, and how well now they can tax it, and taxation is theft. It's like,
right,
homie, I agree with you on all that shit, but how many lives just changed for the better? How many people didn't get caged like animals because of marijuana? You know what I mean? So it's like, it's a perfect example. Yeah, go ahead.
I actually just had this conversation with somebody. I was trying to explain to someone before the caucus the convention got rescheduled. There, I was trying to explain libertarianism, and well, not like explain it because I'm no expert on it or anything like that, but I was like, they believe in like all drugs should be legalized, well, some people do, where this way you're not infringing upon anyone's freedoms. You want to do coke, you want to do crack, you want to do heroin, go off and do it. You're, as long as you're not hurting me. And that was the message I was trying to purvey. And they were like, oh, so now heroin addicts and crackheads are just going to be running around the streets.
Right. That's a natural response.
I was like, one, crackheads are already running around the streets. Two, the person I was speaking to, I was like, you live a pretty simplified life. You go to the same grocery store, you go to the same libraries, you go to the same restaurants, you visit the same friends that live in the same neighborhoods for the past 25 years. In the past decade, in the past 2 decades, how many interactions with crackheads have you had living in white suburban New York? 0? Oh, shocking. So if we legalize heroin and coke and crack and all this stuff, you're probably still going to have 0 interactions with, just based upon where you live. It's
I think also, for whatever reason, this is almost like a natural reaction people have to when you say something like that. Because I'm saying, or because I believe that all drugs or whatever should be all legal, it doesn't mean I'm encouraging you should do that thing, right? Or like prostitution as it should also be completely legal, right? But I'm not going to go and be like to my daughter, hey, you should be a prostitute because I'm a libertarian.
Right, we both have daughters, right? Like, I don't
still a moral fucking compass that every single person
I just don't think that 2 people who are consenting to something, 2 grown-ass adults,
Yeah.
Who, even though I think it's a bad decision, I don't think one or both of those two human beings should be, let's call arresting somebody what it is. You're hog tying them behind their back, and then you're throwing them in a cage like an animal.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So we got to be really fucking careful about what we say people are allowed to do that over. You know what I mean? Like, now, yeah, you shoot somebody.
Right.
I'm okay with the vast majority of people, all people would be okay with that person being caged like an animal. Right. Like, so that should be the starting point. Right. Like, so now if two people want to go and have sex in an empty parking lot at 1 o'clock in the morning somewhere, and there's money getting thrown around, like, I'm a parent now. That changes your perspective on a lot of things. And I would, of course I wouldn't want my daughter doing that. I would hope that she grows up, that I'm nurturing her and helping her understand that she has more value than that. And she can bring other values to the world and all these other great things. And that comes from good parenting. That comes from good communities. That comes from her growing up in the right environment. That doesn't come from a law. And this is the most hypocritical part to the people who, so in my view, the right and the left both want to force others how to live how they want to live.
Yes.
Right. And the same people, here's my problem with the right. And the majority of the time I agree with the right. Probably, I don't know, 75% of issues I probably lean, if I had to
lean one way.
Right. Lean one way or the other. I probably lean towards agreeing with the conservatives over the progressives. But here's my problem with the conservatives and the Republicans who claim to be about that liberty shit, is the same people who will say, oh, well, if we allow people to do heroin, now there's going to be fucking heroin addicts everywhere and things are going to get so much worse. But then a week later, when they're talking about gun rights, and listen, I'm the biggest gun advocate there is. Like, I want everybody to be, if I had my way, I'd be able to have an Apache in my backyard with turrets on my roof. But
nuclear weapons.
Right.
Yeah,
but,
I want a bazooka underneath my bed, man.
But those same people will say, well, there's no laws that are going to stop some scumbag from breaking into my house with his gun and shooting at me and my family. So we need to stop making all these laws because I need to be able to have a gun so that I can shoot back. Amen, brother. I got you, homie. I'm on the same page. But then I hope you keep that same energy when it comes to something like drugs or prostitution or all this other stuff. There's no law. If somebody's down and out and they're in a spot where they need to have sex for money, they're not gonna go, well, what did that guy in DC write on a piece of paper 2.5 years ago? That's not what they're gonna do. Right. But they're not hurting anybody else. So just like I would advocate for you to be able to have a gun on your waist, like I do most of my life, to be able to protect my daughter if I need to, right? Because I know that any law that they write down, that a bunch of jackwagons in DC write down on a piece of paper, isn't going to stop some scumbag from coming and threatening my life. Just like I know that's true. I know that, I mean, there's already just like gun owners say, there's already gun laws. There's already drug laws.
Yeah.
Right.
There's already
working. The war on
it,
drugs has been a complete fucking failure.
That's right.
Right. Like the cartels are literal, like almost mini states now.
Dude,
in Mexico that have little tiny armies themselves.
Yeah. What about when
product of the war on drugs? Go ahead.
They arrested what's his name's son?
El
Chapo's son, and the cartels showed up, and like the Mexican army was like, all right,
was literally defeated
you can
in
have
battle by the narco army.
Right.
Yeah, that's that being able to happen is literally a product of the war on drugs and making almost, making cocaine and all these other things illegal. You've created a black market. It's very profitable to the point where me and you have watched Narcos, dude.
Yeah.
These guys are swimming in billions of dollars. Yeah. They could literally buy, insane weapons, outfit trucks. They could fucking buy tanks if they could get their hands on it.
And what drives me nuts is it's not like there's not already a historical precedent right here in this country for this. Yeah. 100 years ago, it's not like it's not in the history books. It's not like it's not. There's so much stuff that's not even taught, but this is taught. Mm-hmm. Like, we know that if people want alcohol to put in their body to have a good time, that they're going to go and do it. And now all you did was, instead of just people drinking alcohol, now there's like all these dangerous back alley deals, and there's gangs selling it instead of being able to.
Al Capone, the rise of the mafia was thanks in large
probably
to prohibition.
50 package stores on my way here where you just walk in, here's my money. I'm consenting to this. Give me this alcohol.
Yeah.
I'm going to get fucking wasted. Right.
Yep.
And like, and people are going to do that all the time. And that's fine. But if it was illegal, and this is all that happens with now, there's smuggling, there's gang wars, there's turf wars, there's murder, and then you're tossing people in jail who aren't even involved in any of that dangerous stuff. Matter of fact, those are the real gangsters. Those are the guys that ain't getting thrown in jail. The ones getting thrown in jail are the ones that have like an ounce of marijuana in their pocket or something like that. They're not bothering anybody. And now you just ruined it. And now poverty just went up because how many single family parents are there right now? Because of our prison industrial complex that we have in this country. And we just locked up millions of nonviolent people in this world that just, we have, I think per capita, this might not be right. One of your listeners is going to like look it up and then go on your Facebook page and be like, that guy was wrong.
That's fine.
I think per capita, we have the highest imprisoned rate.
Oh, no, we
world.
do. Yeah. You're
okay.
Right.
All right.
Yeah. We are.
So like, what are we doing? And we're supposed to be, we're supposed to be free.
The country of
Yeah,
freedom
free
has
country.
more people per capita in prison than China. Literally, that's insane.
Yeah.
You know, and if you want to talk about like solutions and things too, like, you know, the left is, and again, I hate labels as well. All right. They don't mean
They
exactly
serve a purpose.
They serve a purpose, right? Because we have to talk about stuff, right? So
you got to talk
sort of
about
frame of reference, right? So the left wants to, they're the social justice warriors. They want to help all Black people and you know, everything. One thing we could all agree on, well, let's say we could agree on with the left is if we just like Black people were disproportionately put in jail because of, let's say, marijuana arrests, right? So that should just be completely legal. They should be expunged. They should be let out of jail if they're in jail for like marijuana possession or something like that. And that is somewhere we could agree. Now, go back to what we were saying before. Conservatives are writing, be like, no, you know, we can't make drugs legal because then we're going to have people, you know, doing drugs and on the streets. But it's just like, if you want actual solutions to things, you have to think, you have to come to a compromise and do things that actually make sense.
Yeah.
Just because like enforcing your morals of all drugs are bad, right, are going to disproportionately affect people in certain ways. Does that make any sense? I don't know. No,
it does make sense because that's why we're in the situation we're in. Whether you look at left, progressive left, right, extreme right, libertarians, anything like that, it's gotten to the point where it's emotion based, and we only care about pushing our party's morals on. That's why there's no bipartisanship anymore. That's why me and you, Skaggs, jumped on Biden on his inauguration, saying he's going to be the most unifying president ever.
Opposite,
and he's done nothing but the complete opposite. Unity and coming to a compromise. You know, when we first started this podcast, I don't remember no, this was after the midterm elections, after Trump was elected. So like 2018, we didn't have the podcast yet, right?
No, it was 2019. It was sometime right before COVID started.
Right.
Like January of 2020 was when we started like our first episode, I'm pretty sure.
Right. So when Trump became president and then the Democrats took over the House and the Senate, I believe, or whatever. And like I was trying to explain to people, I was like, yes, this is how it works. The two parties should work together to make a difference. Not one party gangs up and takes control of the House so they can fuck with the other party any other way. We have these parties as a means to, I have ideas, you have ideas, let's work together. Now it's just my morals and, you know, values are more virtuous than yours.
Yeah, I just, maybe a way I better could make that point before. You know, obviously all conservatives or people on the right now are going to look at Manhattan or the city and see the drug problem, the crime problem, be like, wow, this is terrible. This is the product of bad leadership by Democrats, right? Yeah, no, but who was the one who started the war on drugs? Ronald Reagan, right? He's a god to conservatives, right? Yeah, so it's like your policy from back in the day is really the reason why culturally this decay has occurred, which causes these cities to be shitty. I'm sorry. And then, yes, Democrats are in charge now. They're not making the fucking situation any better, but you still hold, I'm sorry to generalize conservatives, but, you know, we give the left a lot of shit on this show to begin with. So, but you still hold that, some of you still hold that same value of every drug needs to be illegal, you know, recreational wise. But yeah, but that's the fucking problem. That's why the cities have become so fucked up, because of that. Like, it infuriates me. And we could use this same argument, especially for war, right? We did this with Scott. It fucking infuriates me that conservatives can't see that this like empire mentality we have is fucking bullshit. The same people who complain about the deep state and how Trump got fucked and all this and that, as soon as those people tell you, hey, Russia's aggressing against us, they go, oh yeah, right, we got to go over there and stop Putin, and because of World War II and this and that. And I'm just like, what are you talking about? You just fucking said that the deep state just fucked Trump over, but you're now believing the same people.
No, it's the same. And that, just like I was just bashing on the right now for their hypocrisy with gun rights versus drug laws, it works the same. Like the left, I mean, you can't scream about how the system is racist and the system is evil and the system is decaying and the system does not favor the lower rungs of the socioeconomic class. And you can't tell me that the people in charge are evil and racist and bigots and then get upset when somebody like me challenges you and says, so why are you voting in people that are promising to grow the system?
Yes.
Or like the January 6th crowd. And it's like, so these people, you just told me that the people that are inside that building right there are racist, evil bigots. And not only that, like, it's one thing if like your neighbor's a bigot, it's like, all right, I'm not having a beer with him and he won't have any steaks off my grill. Right. But it's another thing if you're telling me that the people writing our laws is a bigot. And then, so now we're right outside their house and we storm that place. And now listen, the people on January 6th, I think that their heart was in the right place, but they were a bunch of idiots in the way they went about it.
Delusions of grandeur.
Yeah, right. And like, you're not gonna, on top of the
nature provocateur.
Yeah, right. There's a lot that you can get into there, but I think they were stupid the way they went about it, and they weren't doing anything but promising themselves a spot in jail because you're up against the biggest, largest empire in the history of the world. So it can't go that way. But regardless, you just spent a summer burning down cities and saying that it was because the system itself, not because your neighbor was racist, but because the politicians and the system that you live under is racist and big, which in part, I agree with a lot of that.
Right.
And then get mad when people are storming that building. That's why, like, I was one of those dudes that when they were in that city and they went after the police building. Now, I know a lot of police, and I think a lot of police are good people inherently, but the redcoats were police for King George, right? Like, the end of the day, that's government with guns. So I do have a big problem with policing in America, and we can go down that rabbit hole if you want. Like, I have answers for what we should do with policing. But aside from that, when they went after the police department, I was like, all right,
that makes sense.
I wish that they lit fire to something and maybe cost some people some lives that weren't really directly affecting them. Maybe they were, I don't know. Maybe not, but that makes more sense in my mind to attack the government, to attack the White House on January 6th, to attack the police buildings. That's how revolutions start. If you're telling me the system you're under is racist and wrong and evil, I'm not saying that it definitely is. I would say that it is, but if that's what you believe, it at least makes sense in my head that that's what you're attacking the system instead of like the local tire
private
shop
property of your common neighbor.
Right.
Right. YouTube, we're not advocating for anybody to cause any sort of violence or storm any building. We're talking theoretically. But I agree with you, man. Are you guys, I know you might be, Cap. Are you familiar with Kyle Kalinski? Like socialist, Bernie bro, sort of left.
I feel like I know the name.
Pretty really famous, been on Joe Rogan, popular guy on the left.
Maybe that's where I know the name.
And he always will call out, like, look, the Democrats, the government is in cahoots with these corporations and they're doing this to fuck you over. And his answer, his solution to all these problems that come from government are, we need to nationalize the corporation and give more power to the government. Going to what you were saying before, I can't understand from the left as well. You're saying the government's racist, the corporations are corrupt, they work with the government. How is your answer to nationalize and give every facet of control or power over society to the same entity which you claim is racist, is corrupt? Like, I would like to get rid of everything, right?
There's a quote that I'll say whenever I'm having a conversation, a debate with socialists. I think Peter O'Rourke said it, maybe. Don't quote me on that. But the quote, and don't quote me on the quote, it's when legislators are put in charge of the market, the first thing bought and sold are the legislators.
Yes.
Right? So it's and that'll open up the conversation with some socialists or some people that are just like statists and pro big government. It'll at least open up the conversation, as long as I don't start with, hi, I'm Lance, I'm a libertarian, right? It'll at least open up the conversation of, listen, if you want to, like, if the government has a monopoly on something, that's exactly what it is. Now it's a monopoly, but also they have the law behind it.
Right.
So there's no competition out there. And the legislators are just going to write every law and tax code and regulation that favors the corporations that are in there, that, you know, house their lobbyists and that are doing them the favors. And then it's one big circle and we're not in it.
Right.
We're not. And now, as opposed to if we took government out of the market, now, instead of answering to the lobbyists and answering to the politicians, those stores, those corporations, or wherever it is that you're trying to do a transaction, trying to do business with somebody, they have to answer to the customers.
Right.
They have to do whatever it is that the customers.
It's almost like a form of democracy in on its own too, for the people who
people vote with their dollars.
Democracy so much, right?
Right. People vote with their dollars, right? As opposed to right now, I mean, we've seen in this past 2 years what they'll do to a small business. You know, your local, you know, place that's selling hammers and saws can't open up, but Home Depot can.
Right.
Because if you go into that place over there, you're going to drop dead on the floor from COVID, but you can go into Home Depot.
Right.
I wonder why.
Yeah, we made that point before a million times on the show.
Yeah.
You know what we're saying here. Let me take a local Connecticut issue. I'm sure you're probably familiar with, right? And I think I've made this point on the show before, but in Connecticut, our basically one power supplier is Eversource Energy for the most part, right? And boy, since I moved up here a couple of years ago, the past couple of years, there's been bad storms, power lines go down, power goes out. And each time, every year this has happened, each time it's taken weeks for Eversource to respond, to get the power back on, whatnot. On top of that, I pay probably the highest, I'm sure maybe you do too, I don't know, the highest rates of electricity in the country.
It's bad.
It's
really bad.
And it's majority, when they give you your bill, it's more for the travel of the electricity from source to your house than it is the electricity itself. So I'm paying almost sometimes double just for the transportation of electricity. And I've had arguments sometimes on my town's Facebook page, right, where people will be like, how is this possible that we're paying so much with such bad service? Why isn't Chris Murphy and Pura, who's the regulating board, doing anything about this? And they'll like people will get outraged. They'll tell Pura, they'll tell Chris Murphy will put out a strong statement. They'll go have their regulation meeting behind the scenes, and they'll agree to slightly lower the cost of service. And I don't think people understand what just occurred.
Right.
The price is already completely overpriced. They have a monopoly on the entire distribution of power and production of power in the system. And the politicians can pretend to talk tough. And we brought the price down to something, you know, like that's more palatable for you. But at the same time, it's still fucking high, right? All it is just a show, and it's a monopoly. And the politicians are playing a role as if they're changing or fixing this problem when they're not. They're just throwing you a bone, and people are too fucking stupid.
It's just to shut you up. That's all it, right.
Yeah. But if you had a free market, it would provide a cheaper. You could be like, fuck Eversource, I'm going to the Captain's Power Company, right? Because they're charging less, and they don't take 4 weeks to get my power.
And here's
back
another
online.
spot that socialists are very, very wrong. The one argument you'll hear right away is, well, in a free market, monopolies can happen, and then what are you going to do? There's two problems with that with that analogy, and it's not apples to oranges at all. It's like apples to lampshades. It's not. Those two things are not the same. Here's why. One, people in the liberty circles, libertarians, whatever you want to call me or call people who think like I do, it's not fit. Like, you cannot put my ideas and my solutions up against perfect, because there is no we don't have perfect right now. Right. So no matter what,
I always say there's no such thing as utopia. It's not possible.
Like you're if your only argument is when I come at you and you're like, well, yeah, that would be a lot better than what we have now.
Or what about
what about this?
Or what about it?
And it's like, okay, yeah, I'm not claiming, but like there's not a group of animals on this planet that live in a world where there is zero that goes wrong, humans included. Yes. Right. So putting our ideas up against perfection is not fair. Put our ideas up against what is. Right. That's the right way to do it. Now, and the second reason why why the whole, like, well, if there's free markets, it might be monopolies. In a truly free market where the government is not governing, there's no legislation involved in the marketplace. If a monopoly happens, the only way that can happen is that that company or corporation or business or whatever it is offering a fantastic fucking product and keeping a lot of people happy with it, and their customer service is great, and their price is very, very fair. Because if it's not, somebody else in a free market can go out and create the same thing, and eventually it will become worth it to somebody to do that. In the monopolies we're talking about a government monopoly where, so in a free market monopoly, you make water bottles, right? You make water bottles and you're making a fucking killing and you're making a lot of money, but you're charging way too much. Well, then I just go start making water bottles, right? Eventually somebody's going to be able to do it. And now you have to bring your prices down, or I'm going to sell all the water bottles. You're treating your employees like absolute shit. They're all going to leave and come work for me. Right. So in a free market, you answer to the people, the consumers, the employees. That's who you answer to. Right. The monopolies we're talking about, I think this is an important distinction for your listeners. The monopolies we're talking about are government monopolies, where now let's play that out with the water bottles. You're the government that has complete regulation and control over making water bottles. And now I go, well, that's not run very efficiently, and that's not run very well, and people aren't happy with the product, and there's all kinds of shit going wrong with it, and it's not even good water. I'll go make some. And then you go, no, you won't. If you do, I'm going to lock your ass in a cage. Right. That's a government monopoly. And then that'll parlay well into the police conversation or into the education conversation or healthcare, because that's what we have in those areas.
You know what I think your example is more of like your straight up socialist nationalization of industry.
That's the extreme example.
What we have, I feel, and this is something that socialists, especially like the left nowadays, will be like, well, our society's so fucked up because of capitalism and free markets. It's not. We don't have a free market. What we have right now is your problem, right? The water bottles suck. And now me wanting to make a better water bottle, I come in and I'm like, okay, I'm going to start my own water bottle company, right? But hang on, I can't just start my own water bottle company, right? I need an army of lawyers to get the permits to make water bottles. I need to hire an entire HR staff because there's
vocational licensing. Right. You probably need, you got to go through the state board.
Right. Exactly. And that has to go through the state, right? So the monopoly of the water bottle company, which contributes to the politicians who write the laws, have written laws which prevent competition from coming up. And these same people, like I'm pretty sure Nancy Pelosi just recently said, we live in a free market, walk around and say, it's a free market. It's a free market. That's why, this, that, and meanwhile, it's not. And then that causes socialists or whatever to believe a free market sucks. We can't use, we have to give more power to the same people who are making this problem.
Right. And Skaggs' water bottles, not only would you have to jump through all these different hoops, additionally, on top of that, Skaggs' water bottles doesn't have lobbyists in DC. Right. So now you don't get regulations and tax codes written in your benefit that help you buy the caps on the thing at a better deal. And so it keeps Walmart and Home Depot and Lowe's and like all these companies. I shop at these places. I'm not that guy. You know what I mean? Like,
we all do.
I'm just saying, right. But it keeps those power players as power players. And now those power players want to stay power. What do you think those owners want to become a failure?
Right.
So they're going to do so then they're going to do whatever the government says. So when the government says, hey, you might want to mask your customers, fuck you think they're going to do? Right. So it's all a big, it's fascism. I mean, it's fascism light.
The words right out of my mouth.
It's fascism light.
Essentially fascism.
It's fascism light, but I've never seen a country that started with fascism light go, the people in power, they don't go, you know what? Let's go back to like more free, right? We're only headed in one direction.
I got your anatomy of the state. Hold on.
Go ahead.
In war, state's power is pushed to its ultimate, and under the slogan of defense and emergency, it can impose a tyranny upon the public, such as might be openly resisted in the time of peace.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and if you look at,
and when was that book written? Right.
When was this written, Skaggs? I have no idea.
Have to be. I'm going to say.
Did it even have a date?
50s or 60s.
I was going to say mid
copyright 1974.
All right.
Mid 20th century. Yeah.
Somewhat close. But yeah, man. I mean, look at that. Like, right. Look at what Murray Rothbard said there. Right. Like every war we have fought lately, at least within our own lifetime, they've all been under the pretense of like we're defending ourselves. Everything is fucking defending ourselves. We have Iran surrounded by hundreds of bases because we're defending ourselves. We have to defend the border of Ukraine on the border of actual Russia because we're defending ourselves. We are somehow magically, right? I mean, go listen to Scott Horton talk about this. We are somehow defending ourselves on the other side of the world against a country where that border actually is.
Yeah.
If that makes any fucking sense to people.
And I mean, Dave Smith says this in the opening to every single podcast you listen to. If you listen to the beginning, you want to know who our next war is going to be against. Look at who we're funding right now.
Yeah.
Right. And that's now take that quote and rewind back into the 20th century. It's been true every single time. I don't know how many of your viewers know this. All those dudes that were running around with AKs all over.
Yep, we gave it to them.
They got them from us when they were fighting Russia.
Because we had to defend ourselves from the Soviet Union. So we had to arm the Mujahideen and the Al-Qaeda. Right.
And
train them.
And we were speaking about corporations earlier. Not enough people know this. The military industrial complex is a prison industrial complex in this country, a military industrial complex that we were warned of by Eisenhower, almost 100 years ago now, or 75 years ago. And I think people don't understand there are corporations behind that.
Right.
Raytheon and
Lockheed
Martin, right? Like these
Halliburton
companies, Halliburton, the bombs that, I mean, there's a reason you talk to, like, I got bros over in the military. They'll straight up tell you, oh, we're giving the instructions sometimes. Oh, it's Saturday morning. What does that mean? We got to start every vehicle, leave them on for the next 2 days completely to just burn through as much gas as we can, fire off as many rounds as we can into the mountains. We're gonna go shoot off some, not like target practice, where then it's like, all right, I guess
like
maybe
you have
that
to
makes sense.
expend ammunition because we have a contract.
Exactly. There's contracts that are written, and there's a certain amount of money that has to be spent, and everything else. Afghanistan, I tweeted this out about a month ago. $300 million a day in tax money for 20 years.
Yeah,
because people see the number trillion and they don't realize, when I talk these big numbers, I like putting it in a way that like anybody can.
There's such a big number, it's hard to really. There was a video. I don't know if you guys remember. There was a video of like rice, and it was trying to like show how much money Jeff Bezos had, and it's like this is if each grain of rice was $100,000, and the guy just like fucking pours a whole bag of rice on the table, and it's like a thing this big. It's like that's how much money Jeff Bezos has.
You know how long it would take to count to a trillion?
Yeah,
33,000 years.
Right.
When I heard that, it blew my mind. If one of us tried to sit down and count to
1, 2, 3,
right, just counting to a trillion would take roughly 33,000 years, right? So 33,000 years, and we owe $30 trillion.
Trillion.
$30 trillion. It would take 33,000 years to count.
Yeah, we just
to a trillion. I mean, a billion is a lot. You need 999 of them, and then another one to make 1 trillion, right? Like people, I think it's one of those things that's hard for the average person to conceptualize. And
if you even look at that too, like was that a good investment? Like things are worse now than ever in the past 20 years.
We spent $300 million a day. We did. That's an important thing people don't understand too, is like, because it just comes out of our paycheck. It's not like the US spent $300 million. The US doesn't sell cookies.
Right.
They take the money from us. Right. So we, you, me, all your listeners, everybody we know, all of your brothers, all your sisters, all your cousins, that's who paid $300 million a day for 20 years. And what happened? I'm going to tell you what happened. The opiate fields over there got mined really well. And all of a sudden, oxys and perks were flying off the shelves over here, and Pfizer was making all their money. Right. Yep. That's what happened. And then at the end of it, we took down Al-Qaeda to give Al-Qaeda power back.
Yeah, to fight
that's what happened
on their side.
And and about, I don't know, roughly 10,000 parents here in America had to bury their son. That was the cost of that war. And then look at Korea, look at Vietnam. None of the wars we fought in the past couple, none of them make a damn.
I forget who. Oh, it was Professor, our buddy Professor Giordano from the PAS report had on. I want to say like a retired general or something. He had on somebody who was very high,
wasn't it?
I
read he had some.
He did. He has a lot of military personnel on, and I listened to his most recent one with I think it was a colonel or something.
Yeah.
But this was even further back, several months ago. It's probably still summer, and the guy straight up said, he's like, we don't fight wars to win wars anymore. Like, back in the day, like World War I and all this stuff, we went to war to fight the war. Then it became, I guess, like before it politicized was a thing. The military, the upper echelon of the military got politicized. They're rubbing elbows with, presidents and senators and House representatives, and then they don't want to be in war anymore, and then they become a senator, or they get signed on to the CIA or some military contract company that makes billions and billions. And sooner or later, we don't fight wars to win them anymore. We fight wars to be there, to spend money, to collect money, and you become a general because when you were a private, you were on time. You did the most push-ups. You wore your military blues the certain way. You followed the whole handbook and check, check, check. Didn't matter that you weren't a war hero. We're just going to keep on promoting you because you're a good listener and you follow orders. And now we're going to put you in charge to make sure other people follow orders instead of finding that John Rambo who's going to win you the war.
Yeah. And they always, oh, sorry.
I saw a meme recently, and it was a side-by-side comparison of like their official photo of General Eisenhower and then General Milley, who's like kind of in charge now. And Ike has like one bar of ribbons on his formal dress. And this is the Supreme Allied Commander of World War II. He has like one bar right here, not being a show off. General Milley has a Constitution-sized
it's the whole
thing of ribbons. I have no idea what any of that shit even means, right?
See, he was the good Boy Scout and sold the most cookies.
Right. It's like General Eisenhower literally won World War II. He was in command of the entire fucking operation on every part of the planet. General Milley just lost in Afghanistan and is out there doing critical race theory and whatnot. And he has all of this stuff on there. That's what the fuck is that? Like, that's exactly what you're saying. He did the push-ups. He folded the bed nice and tightly and whatnot. But then when it comes to an actual real life scenario, like with the pullout in Afghanistan, complete disaster.
I mean, they know to an extent. I have to believe they know what they're doing. They certainly know more than the three of us. But at the end of the day, every seat is paid for. So whoever's footing the bill is telling them what the actual orders are.
There was
and they have Americans by and large convinced that we're the good guys and we're doing humanitarian deeds. And to those people, my argument always is, I mean, I could sit down and make a list of dictators and people who are killing their own civilians and people who are doing evil things to the people of their country and everything else. Yet it's just the truth. The places that need freedom and need us to go in there always seem to be a place right now where there's either oil or opiates. Right. Those are the only two, right? And then, maybe 50 years from now, it'll be a different resource where all of a sudden we find a place where we want to go in, take over, put somebody in charge that's friendly with us and will do business with us and will do business with all the crony capitalists and all this other stuff. And then, you go from there and it's rinse, lather, repeat. Like it's the same thing. We're seeing it play out over and over the same exact way. And I have this theory. This is a little bit tinfoily, but I have this theory that
that's not going to be strange here.
we like tinfoily.
I think a lot of this COVID stuff, I think us having to pull out of Afghanistan because we were losing the support of the American people, because we're now sending people off that they were in diapers or weren't even born yet to go fight this war. Right. And we're spending all this money, and a little bit of people are waking up to like, well, the government doesn't sell cookies. It's my money. Right. And then all these deaths, and then you start looking and you're like, we can't beat Afghanistan. Like, where's their Navy? Right. Let me see their Air Force. Let's see that they got a bunch of guys running around that aren't nearly trained. Like there's not a person on the planet that will convince me that they have a well-trained, ready and functioning military like America does, and America and our ally, like Afghanistan and not even Afghanistan. We're not talking the Afghanistan army. They were on our side in that war. We're talking like this little section of Afghanistan, this like Al-Qaeda, this like rogue group in Afghanistan can fight the United Kingdom and America
for 20
Get the
years.
Fuck out of here! Like, Like, come on. Like, we
even physically. I had a buddy who was a Navy SEAL, and he even said when he was overseas in Iraq and Afghanistan, he saw hand-to-hand combat. He's like, these people were fighting like they don't match up to us in
Right.
any stretch of the matter. He's like, I'm 6'1". At the time, he was like 190 pounds of pure American muscle.
Yeah.
He kicks a door down. There's some 5'4" dude, like 160
Right.
pounds, soaking wet, shaking with an AK as Captain America just blew the door off the hinges. There's
Right.
no.
I hate to
equal
even
matchup.
laugh at it because it's
No,
but
well,
yeah,
it's,
right,
it's cruel, and that guy, the
Yeah.
guy probably got a bullet in the head, and it's
Right.
it's so it's
Oh, yeah.
awful. It's awful, but it's first of all, we all know we could have won that. That could have been over in 3 weeks if we wanted it to be. Like,
Yeah.
we have you ever even seen in a movie or on TV or anything like an Al Qaeda jet? Or,
Right.
like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like,
Well, they
don't
have them now.
They don't have. Well, you're right. They got them now, right? And that's the thing is, we spent 20 years, $300 million a day for 20 years, and 10,000 people had to bury their child, and all we did was replace Al Qaeda with Al Qaeda,
Right.
and big pharma got really, really, really fat off of it. And then not only did they get really fat, in order for them to get really fat, they had to ruin a lot of American lives.
Right.
Mhm.
Because I mean, here's the thing: I didn't know. I grew up. We talked about where I grew up right before we started. I grew up all over the place. I was in and out of foster care as a kid, but my childhood, 80s and 90s, 80s to the mid 90s, I grew up in Midtown West with Hell's Kitchen, like like that's where I lived, and I didn't know any heroin addicts. I knew addicts of every other kind, and I knew, and there probably existed, but like now, like nobody can look you straight in the face and tell you now, anybody within our age group. Like, I'm turning 38 next month. I graduated high school with probably 10 or 15 people that are either terrible addicts now or dead from being an opiate addict from
Yes.
from
I have the
oxys,
same
perks.
That's
situation.
ran through
Right.
my grade too.
Yeah, look at that. 3 people. We didn't know we were
Right.
going to say that,
Right.
right?
No.
3 people, and we all know a handful of people
Yes.
at least that are opiate addicts
Right.
or were.
Or
Right.
died in like accidents, car
Mhm.
accidents because they were high or
Yep.
Yeah.
something like that on some shit.
Right. And that was all pushed by the FDA. That's the government. If the free market had their hand in it, the doctor would say, well, here's some pot, here's some marijuana, or here's some for your pain, or here's whatever else, because now they're in the business of making the customer happy, not making Pfizer happy,
Right.
which, and by Pfizer, I mean the government, because the FDA says the FDA has to say what you can put in. If the FDA doesn't approve it, it ain't getting out there. Right. So again, it circles back to this empire that we have now, and these government monopolies are really the problem. If we had a free market in all these industries, the things that people complain about the most in this country, name them. I bet you anything, all your listeners right now would say education, healthcare, policing is a big one in the past 5 or 10 years, right? All of these things are government monopolies.
Right.
Circling back to that water bottle conversation we were having, they're all, you can't open up a competing, and this is another one of those, we need more people who can convey this in a way that's palatable.
Exactly.
And that people can understand it. When I talk about policing, I tell people about privatizing policing, and they go, what the hell are you talking about? Blah, blah, blah. And I just have the conversation. I say, listen, if every town, just like when a town wants to build a new library, what do? They put out bids, right, to a bunch of different construction companies. Some of them have a government monopoly there too, but the ones that don't save money, and they put out bids to 15 different construction companies,
Right.
and they figure out who's going to do it. Or maybe this one was only the 3rd best economically, but we've used that company before and we know they're really, really good at what they do, so we're going to go with them. That's the same as sometimes I'll buy something that's a little bit more, sometimes I get the Kraft macaroni and cheese instead of the store brand. Why?
Right.
So I know that Kraft shit's going to taste real
Way-
fucking
way
good,
better,
right? So yeah,
that's so
sometimes
true.
you-
Yeah, everybody
sometimes-
could probably relate with that. Yeah.
Sometimes you spend a little bit, but now you're voting with your dollars, and now
Yes.
it's on the consumers and the people of that town. So there's all these different. So the whole like, well, who's going to build the roads, and who's going to? This is what libertarians hear all the time. Who's
You've
gonna
asked
build
that
the
question
roads?
before. Kat,
Who's,
I'm pretty
who's
sure,
gonna
yeah.
who's gonna be the police? Do you think? And libertarians don't not see the same problems as everybody else. I know that we need police, right? It's not like I live in La La Land where it's like we don't have to police anything. What I do think is right now, police don't have to make their consumers happy. Police don't have to keep things cheap. Why do I got to pay a guy who's making 90 grand a year or 70 grand a year overtime hours to stand on a corner and flip a sign around or go like this to traffic, and he's making $150 an
Right.
hour of taxpayer money right now? Why? because they have a monopoly on that.
Right.
Because it's just, oh, the police do that. Where if you got 15 different police or security firms that say to, what do you, New Fairfield, right?
Right.
New Fairfield says, hey, the leadership in New Fairfield says, hey, who will police our town for the next 12 months or 24 months or whatever, right? And here's the laws that we want to enforce, right? And now what's your price for that? What's your price for that? Now, if there's a CEO in charge or a manager or it's privatized and there's somebody in charge of that, they want at the end of that contract to make sure that the people of that town are happy.
Right.
Number one, what's going to do that is you're not shooting people that don't deserve to be shot. You're not throwing people in jail for being harmless. You're keeping their costs down as much as possible. So you say, if I'm the CEO of that security firm, Lance's security firm, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to have for a town like this, probably 6 cops, right? You got your 6 cops, right? But in a city, you just scale it up, and now you got more people paying into it, whatever. But now you got your 6 cops in New Fairfield, right? Then I'm going to hire 3 people that are going to be my traffic guys. Now they're not making 50 grand and then making overtime hours to just go like this to try. I could do that.
Right.
I do. You know what I mean? Like
exactly.
Anybody can do that.
It's more efficient.
Right. Now I'm saving everybody money. They're happy with it. Now I'm not going to, and police, just like we were talking about the military, they do the same things. I got friends that are police officers. They go turn their cars on and leave them on because they want their next contract, their next state contract. They have to justify the amount of money that they got. So this is how much they got, and this is how much we spent in gas. So we need this, right? So you're instantly now, just like we were talking about earlier, you are at the will of the people and the consumers and the customers, because that's all we are. We are customers to the police in a way, right? You now have to keep them happy. So you have these 15 different security firms, and then guess what happens if people get, again, we're not up against perfect because there is no perfect.
Right.
We're up against what we have now. If somebody does wrongfully get shot, as the CEO, I investigate that or whatever. I'm actually going to fire that dude, because if I don't, my company's never making another fucking dollar.
Right. It's going to lose a contract.
Right. And so you instantly, every move you make is to make the people that you serve happy. That's true in the public and the private sector, but in the public sector, the people you serve are the fucking dirty ass politicians. Right. That's who you actually serve.
One thing, I don't know if you're finished with your.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
But
I'm a talker.
No, it's fine. The one thing though that is the overlying problem here from the government or the establishment's perspective is we the people. Everything seems to go wrong, or are very against the idea of the people solving it themselves. You know,
any decentralized alternative, right? Like you can see now they're starting to, grind the axe about Bitcoin.
Yep.
It's not by accident, even, and here's again, real quick, Trump has even said like Bitcoin is no good for a sense of, to some effect, right? So go ahead. It basically left or right doesn't matter. Like the state want to control everything.
Yeah, they want control over every aspect instead of giving any of it back to us. I mean, I'm not going to say Trump was 100% for it, but he was more for it. He was demonized for, trying to work for we the people a little bit better than someone like Obama or the Clintons have, or like the Bushes have over the past couple of decades. It always comes down to, if it was left up to us, we'd somehow get it wrong. You know what I mean?
Well, let's transition into Rogan, right? Because I think this works well. You could make that same argument of, boy, why is all this outrage going on right now about Joe Rogan and Spotify and whatnot? Well,
speaking too much truth.
It's kind of because Joe Rogan's just a fucking guy. He's one guy, right? He's independent. He just speaks his mind, just like we try to do on the show. And he's happened to built such a large audience of people that follow him. It dwarfs the corporation, the corporate press, right? Which works with the government and pushes the narrative. That is why there is such this large outrage behind him, and they'll go and use every tactic they can in the book in order to bring him down, which we were kind of talking a little bit about before. A video came out over maybe a week ago or so, and it was of Joe Rogan, and it's like a compilation of a whole bunch of times he says the N-word, right? And this just happens to come out right after there was the whole push about him with misinformation about COVID.
You know, they were sitting on that for
Right,
they were
so
waiting.
It's funny
So-
because
so
there's
he-
a bunch of videos of Joe Biden using the N-word too.
So Joe Rogan and Spotify kind of make a small concession to the left, right, or the establishment, the
corporate press,
the corporate.
right,
Okay, we will agree to put a little disclaimer on episodes that have controversial takes on COVID or whatnot. Okay, I thought it was a mistake. Don't give these people an inch.
Yes.
But Joe Rogan is a good guy, and he probably is trying to make some inroads here, or he thinks. I give Joe Rogan the benefit of the doubt, right? A couple of days later, this video comes out, etc. Now he's again had to make another video where he's kind of apologizing about the whole thing, and now the calls to censor him, to kick him off, to do this, to do that, are up there, right? Everybody wants to kick Joe Rogan off. So, who's behind this was a question that was asked by Andrew Schultz. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Andrew Schultz. He's like
Comedian.
Comedian.
Yeah,
Very
yeah.
familiar.
Podcast.
He's got I think he's got a podcast with Theo Vaughn.
Yes.
Yeah.
This was asked by him. He goes, "Who do you all think is behind this attack on Rogan?" I found this right before we started, and this is interesting as fuck. I did try to independently verify what this account is saying, and it seems pretty legit. So this is a tweet thread I'm going to go over briefly by Local Distance on Twitter, and it's replying to Andrew Schultz and says, "So since you asked, and I love your work, I'll tell you, this is a professional political attack. Three waves, one right after the other, is not a coincidence. Good spacing, good timing, so it's absolutely professional. But who was it, you ask? That takes some digging. But..."
And this is Schultz that wrote all this?
No. This is Local Distance replying to Andrew Schultz, asking the question, who's
Schultz
behind
asked the question. These guys,
Yeah.
okay.
So Local Distance goes, "The video compilation of Rogan saying the N-word was dropped by @Patriot Takes 6 days ago. You see the video in the tweet in pick 1, and Patriot Takes takes credit for republishing the information in pick 2.
The guy's handle is Patriot Takes.
Yes. So Patriot,
Fuck you, Patriot Takes.
Patriot Takes is the entity.
What kind of at least tell the truth. You're not a.
They're
So you're standing up for censorship.
Controlled
Patriot.
opposition.
Fuck out of here.
So they're the ones who made
This is what they
Takes.
want
I don't
you
know
to
who
think
Patriot
is a
Takes
patriot.
but fuck you.
Well, I mean, think of like that group Patriot Front too, right?
Yeah,
But anyway,
forced censorship.
Patriot Takes,
Come
they're
on.
the guys who made the video of Rogan saying the N-word. They clipped a whole bunch of instances and put it together, which has caused this new thing of controversy, right? So number 3, as you can see in their bio, Patriot Takes is partnered with Midas Touch. And this is where it gets interesting. Who is Midas Touch? Well, they're a professional political organization. In fact, they are a Democrat super PAC, right? You guys are familiar, I'm sure, with what a super PAC is. Ben, Brett, and Jordan Misalis, right? All of them have worked in media and have expertise in understanding and manipulating media. The most important thing for us is that Brett was a social media manager for Ellen DeGeneres and an expert editor. These 3 guys work for Midas Touch, right? Patriot Takes works with Midas Touch, and this person says, "I'd say it's a safe bet that given their expertise in social media management, that the N-word video was created by Midas Touch, not by Patriot Takes," right? Midas Touch is basically professionals at making videos like this.
Patriot Takes was just a vehicle that they used to. Right.
Exactly. So I'm not going to go into the rest of this. The guy explains what a super PAC is. I'm sure everybody pretty much is aware.
But this guy did some digging.
He did, right?
Yeah.
So it seems like the video was essentially created by a company that is a super PAC for the Democratic Party. Why
In
would-
other news, the sun is hot. Right.
Right. So
like,
this guy goes into his own reasons about why he thinks that is. I'm pretty sure most people could draw their own conclusions, but obviously the Democrats are in charge right now. They want to control the narrative. They hate Joe Rogan. Yeah, their PAC went and made a video. You know, like in order to make that video, let's just put this in perspective. It's not easy. Joe Rogan has over 1,000 episodes. They're hours and hours long. Someone would have to like spend their weeks watching, rewatching, re-listening to this, finding a moment where he might have said an N-word or whatever, clipping it, putting it together a couple dozen times. That takes a lot of work. There has to be something behind that. So obviously, this is obviously,
and you got to clip it and take it out of context because
right.
You don't want the world to know that it was
exactly
that he was talking about To Kill a Mockingbird. Right. Like they don't, that's the part they don't want, is that it was from a novel,
right.
Or he was talking to somebody, you know, it was like
a song
joke
or something
that he heard from. I heard one of them during his apology was he was quoting Mooney. What's the comedian?
Paul
there?
Mooney.
He was quoting Paul Mooney and just said it. Now, like, is it a mistake? Like, like you're saying N-word. I would prefer to say N-word. It's one of those words that it punches me in the gut when I hear it. It's like, oh yeah,
Right. It's like
right. I get it. But when you're quoting somebody else and you're like, it's just, and like Cap was saying, like you can't like there's, if you're somebody who's also screaming from the rooftops about how many times Biden has said it, or screaming from the rooftops about the 94 crime bill, or screaming from the rooftops about, you know, the Kamala Harris's long track record as the attorney general in California, and her, I mean, just for your listeners that don't know this, one thing that she did, I could name 20 just evil things she's done to the black community, but yet she's like the leader of the Democrat Party that care about the black community and all this other stuff. She literally, she could have taken a bunch of nonviolent offenders and freed them. Majority, over 90% black in California. There was like this specific thing that was going on in California that they were trying to do that because the prisons were overpopulated and everything else. And the reason she gave, and I urge your viewers to look this up because I'm not making this up, and your listeners, the reason she gave it basically slave labor.
Yes,
she wanted them to go fight the fires that were going on in California for like $1 an hour. So go risk your lives for $1 an hour because I don't want to pay the firefighters or pay or anything like that. So you're going to stay our caged animal here in California. You're going to stay a prisoner, even though and the 94 crime bill. I urge people to look into that, look into some of Biden's quotes and things that he said about the black community and everything else. And then the additional hypocrisy of people who get on this like virtue signaling, like this wagon to be more upset about words than, and Dave Smith says this all the time, and I know I keep referencing him. He's one of my heroes in the liberty movement. You know, what you're going to get on somebody for using the N-word, but then not get on people. And on top of not getting on people for, because we all only have so much time in the day to you know, go after whoever it is that we want to go after, but to actually outwardly support bombing and murdering all the poorest brown and black people around the world. Right. But
we can't say one word.
Are the problem.
Dude, I'll be honest with you. I was pretty fucking annoyed the other day when I woke up and saw this, right? And this happens to come on the heels of the same week where they did some sort of military strike against an ISIS leader, and it killed, I believe, 6 children and 4 women. And I was pretty fucking angry because, right, this is coming from the administration. So I think I posted even on my Facebook, which I don't get too political. I'm like, if you are fucking outraged right now about Joe Rogan saying the N-word and not the fact that the government just incinerated 6 children and 4 women, you're fucking retard. I'm sorry, right?
Yeah,
like,
right. And at least there, it's like, I am able to tell myself in my mind, a lot of people don't follow that stuff. You know what you do fucking follow? If you know who Joe Rogan is, then you know who Whoopi Goldberg is.
Yep.
If you know who Joe Rogan is, then you know, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not, and I think I tweeted out, like, I just tweeted like a article that said like what Whoopi said about, you know, the Jewish community or whatever. And I just wrote like, I think I wrote paging Neil Young, like, you know what I mean? Like, and it was like, why is everybody silent on this? Right. And she got,
because she's one of them.
Exactly. Like you're either on their team or you're not. Right. And it just is
people
what it
need
is.
to, I don't think, and I will include Joe Rogan here. I don't think a lot of people realize, no, there are teams, right? And there is that team, the they, them, or we always say they, no, there's team they, right? And they are the ones who are pushing all this shit that has basically fucked up all of society. And they're trying to pit you against you. And God forbid you ever have an independent critical thought, or you do something that becomes popular, because there is a hunger. Right. We were just saying at the beginning of this, how like every politician that's come up recently has been basically fuck the system. So there's this like underlying hatred for the system that people are hungry for. They want to see the system smash, but then the system co-ops that and makes people hate each other and whatnot. And anything that, look at how they treated Trump. Right. Do I like Trump? No, made that fucking perfectly clear. But man, they've undermined him at every turn of his presidency. Was he going to do the right thing here or there? I don't know. Probably not, right, in terms of my own worldview. But they still fucking undermined him with 4 years of fake fucking Russia investigation and whatnot. Why? That's because he was just like the most minimal anti-establishment person ever. He still hired warmongers, John Bolton's, establishment people, but he was just minimally against.
He wasn't on their team,
and they sabotaged him more than ever. They want to fucking
they're still doing investigations. They want to prevent him from being possible to run president for. So I mean, just fucking wake up. Shit, if you haven't realized that yet.
So it's funny.
Bernie Sanders too. I'm sorry to cut you off, but that's what red pilled me so much, right? I used to be a Bernie bro, and I saw the way they treated him. I'm like, what? This doesn't make any sense. This guy is super fucking popular.
Right.
Meanwhile, we got the most unpopular person ever instead of him. That didn't make any sense to me.
Right.
How many times does that need to happen for people to fucking realize something is wrong?
Yeah, right. Well, even the left, like for how long the left, for all of their flaws, they were so pro Bernie over Hillary, which bless their souls. I mean, Bernie sucks economically, but I'd take him over anybody with the last name Clinton, right?
Yeah.
Like, and even the left will tell you, and this is again just more hypocrisy and more just it just shows how tribal really things are.
Yeah.
And when I say tribal, what I mean is like take yourself back to like the 1600s, and there's like, you know, we're coming over into America and we find like these tribes of natives that are like they have no problem going and killing somebody in another tribe, the neighboring tribe, because they're the neighboring tribe.
Yep.
They don't need a justification, a real reason. That's what I mean by tribal. That's the true meaning. That's the true meaning of tribal is you don't need logic. You don't need, it's just, this is my team.
What happens now, what's a common occurrence now, Cap, is if someone presents information or something that happened and it's from, let's say, the perspective of the right, like we can see the revolver.news, they're immediately dismissed. Oh, that's a right-wing news publication or website, right? Same thing for the left too, right? If one of these leftists say something, your initial reaction sometimes is going to be like, that's a socialist,
Democratic talking point.
Right, Democratic talking point. At the same time, and right, that is how bad things have gone. Tribal, like you won't even look at what the person did or said just because they identify with that certain tribe. Yeah. We're almost at the point where we're like crossing over to the other side and beating each other to death.
Yeah.
But right now, like you don't even want to. Oh, that tribe said it, so I'm not going to even take it seriously.
Yeah, but then if you're not in either tribe, and you get an array of people coming on and talking, and your show is 11 times more popular than the biggest show on CNN,
Fox and CNN. Yeah.
Now you got a problem because I think among the people, guys like us three, guys like your listeners, everybody you run into at the gas station and the grocery store, they're in tribes. But the real truth of the matter is the way the people that are in power see it is that we are all one tribe and they are a tribe.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Right.
So
they hate us. Yes.
When they're finished with the right, for all the progressives who want all this insanity and you're a right-wing extremist, when they're finished with the right, guess who they're coming after? It's not going to be, well, I was on your side. No, you were never on the establishment side. They actually
often, in any totalitarian regime, I'm sure you're familiar with this, at any time like the Soviet Union takes power or whoever, the first people they kill are the people who help them take power.
Yeah.
Right? Because those are the revolutionaries that overthrow governments, right? And when you become the government, you don't want those fucking people.
And they know the dirty shit.
Right.
So it only takes one of them speaking up, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Those are the first people. They'll probably kill the left before they get rid of the right once they've accumulated the means to do so.
Yep.
We got more guns, so yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I'm just saying theoretically.
Yeah.
No, I got you. I'm fucking
it happens every time. Historically. I mean, that's literally a historical fact. I mean, that's who they go after. Yeah, it's a sad state of affairs that we're in. I don't know that I have all the answers. I think
no one does, man.
Listen, like I always said, if we had the answers, we'd be running for office.
Yeah. Well, I think the answer. I shouldn't say that. I actually feel pretty confident that the answer. I don't have an answer for every topic, but I think the answer is decentralizing and not giving all these bastards power.
No, yeah,
but
I
the problem
agree
is. Where do you? I mean,
how does that happen?
This power we're talking about, and let's not get confused here. We're talking about the single most powerful, most militarized, strongest, and most influential
entity
in the history of humankind.
The United States government is so big, they don't even know how big they are.
Right.
Like there's people that are in some government program that got created in the late 80s, still showing up to an office 20 years later, not pushing a key, getting paid $60 an hour to do God knows what was solved, 15 years ago.
It's not evident if it's even possible that this problem can be solved, right? Like think of like Area 51 and how deep that whole thing goes, right? I mean, that's layer upon layer upon layer of no one really even knows who's in charge. So if we were by some miracle, and I think Dave has made this point himself to bring him up again, if we were by some miracle happen to get a President Dave Smith, and he gets in charge and he starts getting rid of this organization and that organization,
he's going to get suicided.
He'll probably get suicided, number one, right? But even if you were on
Yeah.
paper as a president, I'm the commander in chief. You have to listen to me because I'm the commander in chief, and that's the way our system is set up. And you did like abolish the CIA or the FBI or whatever. Are they really gone though?
No.
Maybe they put like on paper and like in the public view, yeah, they're gone, right? But then there's a black site and there's infrastructure behind the scenes that the president don't even fucking know about.
The
right?
puppet masters are still there.
Yeah, and I think I forget who's made this point. This change has. I've said before, like almost if we really want to change something, you need to elect a moral person who takes the sword and casts it into the ocean, right? Like you can't take the sword and then use it against other people.
Yeah, you got to throw the ring into the fire, right?
Right.
You got to throw
the ring.
Yeah,
The ring of power is almost.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's actually my wedding ring.
you got.
But at the same time, it's not even going to work just because of like the way people are right now. That would drive people insane. Me and you have talked about this before, right? Right now, people want more government. They want daddy to tell them everything to do. So like if a person came in and was like, okay, I'm running on getting rid of the government telling everybody what to do, some people's fucking minds would explode, right? And in order to get to that person, people need to vote, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that speaks to a point, like federal power is
So
power
I agree,
in general,
right? Like federal power
I
is the
think
biggest problem.
even in the perfect Incapistan world that we referenced earlier, and for people that don't know, anarcho-capitalism is a form of libertarianism. It's really just it's all about like property rights and self-ownership and owning yourself and self-governance and the non-aggression principle and it's kind of a wing of the libertarianism, and Capistan is like, if we had our perfect way, this would be the world that we would see how it would operate. And when Skag says utopia, again, it doesn't mean it's going to be perfect. It means this is our utopia. This is how we think it would go best. And
I guess you could say Ann Capistan is almost like the complete opposite of like a communist society or
right. Yeah, it's right. Everything, again, unless somebody's hurting somebody or taking their stuff, they're free to go about their way. And everything's privatized, which goes back to that conversation I was having about police and all those other things. But if we ever got there, one thing I'm learning in my journey about learning about liberty is people innately want to be governed on some level. And so there would be societies and communities. I think a lot of people, when they hear like anarchy is like a dirty word in our society.
Yep. It needs to be
that it's a dirty word.
Yeah, it needs to be redefined.
Again, your listeners, your viewers, Spooner, Bastiat, Mises, Rothbard, like learn about anarchy. Anarchy is not what it's projected out to be. Anarchy is peace. Anarchy is not what it's projected onto you as. And I think that, and I'm new to learning all of this stuff. Me too. I'm not perfect on it, but I understand that there would be societies and communes and communities, but you can now vote with your feet. You know, if this one place does ban prostitution and that's the only thing you got going for you is to be a prostitute, you can move 3 towns over where they allow it or whatever. Yeah. But right now, the huge state, we have 535 people that write our laws for 350 million Americans roughly or whatever. And it's just, we need to decentralize.
It's not working anymore.
No, right. We need to decentralize and let people go live with other people that they want to live with and how they want to live. And it's just, I think, going back to that conversation about what is the solution, secession would be a good start. I think, what's wrong with divorce? Would you rather a couple that's, there's like domestic abuse and violence going on and affairs and everything else be forced to have to stay together? And you know what I mean? Like, we're not happy. We're not.
The only problem I really see with some type of secession is that, whatever states succeed from each other or succeed from the country, like the powers that be. So obviously New York isn't going to be someone who succeeds from the country, right? So what
from the union? Let's put it
from
I got you.
So they're going to hold some sort of power, whatever, Florida needs that was getting from New York, yeah, they're going to need to find a new supplier, whatever for product A that came out of New York or whatever. I think whatever part of the country stays with the government and doesn't succeed is going to make it a really hard time on everyone who succeeds. Even though there's going to be this divorce, I think it's going to get even dirtier for the states. That it's going to be a long time before things settle down and you find a status quo for those states.
No matter what, if we're talking secession, I mean, the only other alternative on top of secession, the only direction this is headed in is one of three things: secession, things we do figure it out, and all of a sudden, instead of going in this bad direction, we start going in a good direction, or a bloody revolution. So right. 2 out of the 3 are not easy. We're going to coast to it. But where I would push back on that, Cap, is what does New York make or have as a resource that
Well, see, I'm just using this as an example. If I wish I had a much more solid example of a product that a state has that another state needs. I don't.
I mean, so not only can other places and people provide those things, but on top of that, I would say that it doesn't only hurt, in your example of Florida and New York, it doesn't just hurt Florida to not do business with New York. It hurts New York to not do business with Florida. Yes. Right. So again, the market, people, one thing that the free market loves, the color they see most, going green. Back to the race conversation, is green, right? So either somebody else will offer it, or it's going to hurt the state that now has one less buyer. Yeah. And we're not talking one. It's not like Florida would be the only one, right? Alabama ain't doing business with New York, right? Texas, Tennessee, Georgia, right. These places that are far right. And there's the country, the statists, the people in power are going to be up against, if it were to result in civil war or secession, which I hope in my lifetime it doesn't. I have a daughter. I don't want to see these things happen. But if that's the direction we're going in, so I think it was Scott Horton who you guys just had on, who's a brilliant man, far smarter than I'll ever be. I think it's him that made this point. It used to be geographically defined. The U.S. Civil War was geographically defined. It was literally the Mason-Dixon line. There was a line on the ground. Right. There are pockets, the 2 places in Connecticut that we live are going to have more red than blue that compared to the cities and the coast and stuff like that. But it's not as geographically defined. Because this isn't segregated by it's the segregation is along political lines, and your neighbor could just as likely be a far left liberal,
as it was in Civil War upon geographic lines of north.
Right. So south, it's gonna create a very difficult problem. And I mean, listen, war is probably the worst thing that can happen to humankind.
It's the worst solution.
Yeah, I hope it doesn't go there.
Honestly, I think when it comes, I think secession is a good idea, right? Everybody should have the right to associate or not, even states,
or at least whatnot, right. But why not let the states just all be their own states we were supposed to?
I think though these are problems that me and you could talk about and fine, but if you tell someone secession culturally in America, the first thing they think of is the South, right? Racist, secession, evil people, etc., and that tanks the whole conversation, right? I think probably the best idea, in order to, this may be where we'll end it, right? To fix this fucking problem we have in the country, in our society, right, is maybe we already have the blueprint. It's already been done before. We need to revert back to the way the country was at the very founding, which is a constitutional republic. And you in South Carolina, you don't agree with me in Rhode Island, right? So over there, you stay over there, do your thing. I stay over here and do my thing. And the federal government is very weak and doesn't make overarching laws that govern every single place. The only thing the federal government really should exist for is facilitating a common defense, because some outside aggressor comes and actually physically attacks us on our own fucking property.
Defense.
Right. That's basically it.
Not offense, defense.
And they should only really exist for that thing in the event it actually happens, not in the imagined self-defense where we have to go protect Ukraine. You know what I'm trying to say? So would I prefer to live in Ancapistan? Of course, right? But then we have to be realistic, right? People don't even understand what the fuck we're talking about. So if we're gonna present some sort of idea or reform that seems like it's maybe somewhat possible. Maybe it's not possible at all, right? We just got to go back to the way things were. We're like decentralized constitutional republic with a very weak federal government that's only there to facilitate uniting everybody to fight against an outside aggressor when they actually come over here and fucking attack us. And that's it.
And if that conversation is packaged the right way, I think you can get people on the left and the right to buy in.
Right.
If you say to somebody on the left, like, hey, I understand that you want this, and that, X, Y, and Z. There are millions of other people out there that want the same thing. Right.
Right.
So why not find pockets of areas where that's what you get?
Exactly.
And 10 to 1, they wouldn't even have to go far.
At my throat because I don't want those things.
Right.
Like, you don't want any guns in your community. God bless you. I know they're not going to come for me because I got a gun. They're going to go for you, moron. Right. But whatever. That's what you want.
Right.
Listen, more power to you.
California, you want to run things the way you want to run them over there. Go ahead. If China happens to send that magical invasion fleet across the ocean to come, I will come and help you.
Yeah.
So long as you don't tell me I have to live under your California rules.
Yeah. In North Carolina.
If some outside aggressor comes, the federal government will facilitate my transportation from over here to over there to help you. And then once it's over and we win, we go back our separate ways and do our own thing.
Right.
That's it. That's all the federal government should really, be for. So. Anything else, Cap?
No, I'm good. This was a great conversation, man. You guys, Lance?
Yeah. No, guys, I really enjoyed this. I wanted to start off and I really didn't by just saying thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. I love, not everybody wants to have these conversations. We know that, right? Like, there's so many, you probably have family members just like I do and friends on Facebook and everything else that probably they're rolling their eyes when they see your post or whatever. So that's one thing that I love about this being able to have these long form conversations with other people that want to, and obviously people that want to listen in are going to do that. And it's a lot of fun for me because it's been a journey for me, learning and hearing from other people and learning from other people and everything else. So thank you guys so much.
Yeah. Thank you for coming, man.
You're welcome, man. Your journey's not over, man. It's just getting started, pal.
Definitely. All right.
So,
sign us off.
Yeah. Doom Nation, I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Lance, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. Make sure you guys like, share, and subscribe. And we'll be coming out with another episode shortly. So thank you guys. Have a good night.
Good night. Later.